Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of What They Don't Say. If you harm a police officer, the law comes down on you hard. We've heard this over and over again. We've seen it in the media. You're held to a higher standard because you harmed somebody who was put on a pedestal in society. Police officers are meant to protect us. Now, what happens when it's the officer doing the harm? What happens when the very people who are supposed to protect us are the ones harming us? Now, that's the question that our guest today, Chris McGhee, is trying to answer. His daughter, who we're going to call G, was sexually abused when she was 15 by a police officer named Joseph Palmer. Joseph Palmer was a police officer who was part of a neighborhood walk program. He was a part of the high school, he attended events, he played football with the kids, and overall, this was a 27-year-old police officer who was trusted by the community, and even the department had announced on Facebook that parents could happily trust Joseph Palmer. Well, he abused that trust and that power when he chose to sexually abuse a 15-year-old girl. Ultimately, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of corruption of a minor and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. But he received no jail time for his crime, and he did not have to register on the National Sex Offender Database. Quite literally, someone stealing a car will receive a harsher penalty than this cop did in this case. Now, Chris is not an attorney, and he has zero background in law. And honestly, I don't know if he's ever taken a single day of law class in his life. But he is a pissed off dad who doesn't want anybody to go through what him and his family have had to go through with this case. He is working on passing a bill called Pennsylvania H.B. 1847 that would make corruption of a minor a felony in all cases where the defendant holds a position of authority, including police officers. His story and his daughter's story are a part of a bigger article that the Washington Post put out. They spent over a year gathering evidence and writing this article. I will link it in the description below. The article has some mind-blowing statistics and several stories of incredible survivors and all they've had to go through. Chris is going to shed light on this bill that he's trying to pass, as well as talk about what it's like being a parent having a child who's gone through this. Without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Chris McGhee. How are we? Are we all feeling ready to go? Yeah.
I'm pumped up. I've got about 3 margaritas in me and popped some mollies. So oh
So
fuck,
he's ready to roll.
we're
Like
recording,
literally.
aren't we? Oh,
He's
that's
like, I'm
great.
feeling so loosey goosey right now. Okay, so Chris, I actually had a question that I reread the part of the Washington Post article that was specific to you and your daughter, and you might not be able to answer this, and like maybe it's just one of those things that was just unfortunate and just sucked and there was nothing you could do about it, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about why the officer was only charged with corruption of a minor and wasn't charged with assault of a minor or anything like that. I know in the article it said all like 6 felony charges were dropped. But I was wondering if you had any insight into why that might have happened.
Yeah, so it started out in the very beginning with, we've got all these felonies. We're gonna nail him on all of these. And the problem was that he, like a lot of predators, and they're really good at doing this, they're good at covering their tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first thing he did was got her to go to Snapchat. And Snapchat is a favorite tool of these dirtbags because it is going to, as you well know, the texts are going to disappear, the images will disappear,
Right.
and whatnot. The Snapchat logs were subpoenaed by the DA, and they were able to get some stuff. They couldn't get all of it. They couldn't get any of the images. They were able to get some of the texts, not all of it. So what was happening was they were looking for what they referred to as a smoking gun. They were looking for the images. They were looking for things that they could absolutely positively pin it on him, and they couldn't. And they had him, there was actually a recording of him on a Ring camera the morning that he was notified that he was on administrative leave because of the investigation. He had called a fellow officer And the fellow officer stepped out onto the front porch and was speaking with Palmer and Joseph, pardon me. And Joseph said to him, I was sent home because of an investigation. I think something's going on. And, I may have done some inappropriate stuff with this kid. Can you find out what's going on? Well, unfortunately, in the state of Pennsylvania, unless he agrees to what's called in that case, it would have been referred to as a wiretap, it was inadmissible. So couldn't use that. The While my daughter was certainly willing to testify, and she had a very compelling story to tell, the prosecutor had to make a decision about what was in the best interest of my daughter and what they were able to get done. Now, I do have some concerns about that because in the state of Pennsylvania, this charge, corruption of a minor of a sexual nature, which is a misdemeanor, has been used repeatedly
Mm-hmm.
for several officers who have done very, very similar. So I understand that they made a decision based on what they could do, what he was willing to agree to, and what was in the best interest of my daughter.
Right.
So that's really what it came down to.
You touched upon something that's super important where I think that the justice system especially fails sexual assault survivors is that oftentimes there is no smoking gun in these cases, right? Like in murder cases, there's the murder weapon. You have to find the murder weapon whose prints are on them. You know what I mean? Like that's the smoking gun. But in sexual assault cases, it's so oftentimes he said, she said, there is really no hard evidence. There is no smoking gun. And so people and prosecutors kind of use that as an excuse to say, oh, well, is there really anything that we can do? Or is there any chance that we can actually win this? And like, it just seems like such a stupid excuse, you know? Like, I think for us who have seen this happen and been through this process, it's kind of crazy that there hasn't been those legislative changes or just like changes of justice system that can help protect survivors. And I think that is just like ends up leading to really, really heartbreaking outcomes.
Fortunately, because of all of the brave people who have come forward, and because of the Me Too movement, there is more weight placed on the word of the survivor. It is no longer, we've got to have that hard evidence. But to your point, Lauren, juries still look at that stuff. And it only takes one person on the jury to say, yeah, no, I'm not buying it. And so the prosecutor is making a
Like a calculated
decision. And yeah, I mean, it sucks. It really sucks. Unfortunately, the way the laws currently are set, that's what we're okay with,
Right.
and so that's why I want to change it.
Yeah,
That's why you're
absolutely.
here.
Yeah. That's why we're talking about this. Okay, let's back up a little bit, kind of give our audience a little bit of background. I think that your story might kind of seem unique, but as we read on the Washington Post article, which we'll link in our description and put that on our Instagram, this happens all the time, which is so heartbreaking. So could you give the audience a bit of an introduction into who you are and what happened to your family?
My name again is Chris McGhee. I am father of 3 beautiful young ladies. I live in York, Pennsylvania with my wife, and I clean the garage on the weekends. I drive my motorcycle. I fight crabgrass, and I lead a pretty boring life. But we're talking today because in 2021, my then 15-year-old daughter was sexually assaulted by a police officer. We were participating with the York City Police Department with these community walks. It was a community outreach initiative that we were part of. One of the officers, we developed um, a friendship, if you will, and he took an interest in helping my daughter. He was aware she was having a hard time with things and struggling with a previous sexual assault. And he told my wife and I that he wanted to mentor her, wanted to help her, and be a positive force in her life. And boy, we thought that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he used his position of authority to take advantage of her. And about 4 or 5 months after we met him, he assaulted my daughter and reminded her that he's a cop. He has the power to make her life miserable. He has the influence over her parents to have her admitted to the hospital and locked up for a long time.
My gosh.
And oh, by the way, you've already made she did not press charges for the first sexual assault, but we were aware of the first sexual assault, and he reminded her that you've already put that out there once. Nobody's going to believe you a second time. So, it's best for you to keep this thing quiet and between us. So she carried this around for 3-4 months, and when we found out about it, with our daughter's support, we decided to press charges. We were fortunate to have the support of the York City Police Department, and the commissioner was very supportive of us and
That's
my
good.
daughter, and we pressed charges. And after a year and a half, at the very end, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge, corruption of a minor of a sexual nature. He received no jail time. He received no registration on the national database of sexual offenders. He got 3 to 5 years of probation, and that was it. And so when he was walking out of the courtroom that day, it was kind of a seminal moment for me. I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And afterwards, right outside the courtroom that day, one of the other officers from York City met us and had shared his frustration about the plea. And he said to me, you ought to consider changing the law so that this doesn't happen again. And I thought about it, and I thought,
Like,
yeah,
that's an option.
maybe I should. Yeah. I was like, really? Can I do that? And so I started looking into it, and I was like, this is so fucked up.
Yeah.
Because it didn't just happen to us, and it had happened to, I think, 6 or 7 other families and survivors within the past 5 years or so. And I was like, this is not okay. So I called up my state legislator and Joe Diorsi, and I laid out all my research, which was 10 minutes of Google searching. And I printed them out, all these articles. I laid them out on the desk in front of him, and I said, so this is what's going on. Are you okay with this? I mean, because I sure as hell am not. And I'll never forget the look on his face. He was like, you got to be kidding me. And to be honest, I had no idea what I was asking. I didn't have a clue of this process, but I was pissed. And I wanted some help fixing this,
Right.
and so I was very fortunate that Joe was willing to help me fight this thing and make a change.
It can be incredibly disturbing once you start to really go down that rabbit hole of how fucked up this whole space is. And like you know, a lot of people now we've learned like the overarching statistics of sexual assault, and there's all these little pockets, within the military and police and, like family members that once you start to really dive into those like pockets within this space, it
Yeah.
is overwhelmingly disturbing on a whole new level.
And especially when you think of the fact that those numbers are just what are reported, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
In our case, the prosecutor had spoken to several other kids who this guy had been assaulting, but they were not they they just they couldn't come forward for whatever
Right.
reason. They couldn't do it, and we know full well that there are other people out there, and so those numbers are just they're a sliver of the
Hmm.
reality out there, and so we gotta be having these conversations. Nobody wants to have these conversations. It's really uncomfortable. Well, hey, guess
Yeah.
what? The past couple of years have been pretty uncomfortable in my house.
Yeah.
It is sucked really bad. Well, you know what? People need to get pissed. People need to take note of this.
Diving a little bit more into the story you just told, policy and policy changes, House bills, legislation, it's all it's all so confusing.
Yeah.
Can you touch upon like what the status quo is currently for why police officers who sexually assault children basically are getting off so easily? Like what is the policy right now?
Honestly, Lauren, I couldn't tell you.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think part of it is we as a society hold our police officers to a higher standard.
Hmm.
And you know what? We should. They have a really hard job.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are running into dangerous situations. We should. For every shitty cop out there, for every Joseph Palmer, for every Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd, there are dozens and dozens of really good cops who are doing the best that they can.
Hmm.
But for the longest time, we have held them to this on this pedestal, and I think it's just been heresy to even think that there are some bad cops, and through Me Too, through social media and the advent of cell phones with cameras, and putting more of a spotlight on these things, we're having more conversations, and I think there is more awareness that that needs to change. You've also got a very strong police union that
Mm.
is also involved with this. We were very fortunate. HB 1847 did not. The police union looked at the bill and they agreed not to fight it. Not to say that they supported it, but I think, and this is just my speculation, that they're like, well, it's hard to defend a bad cop. If you did something bad, you should be held accountable. I mean, it doesn't look good for the good guys out there. But make no mistake, the police union is doing their best to help shape those laws that do hold them accountable, and so that I think that's a big part of it.
It would not not make the police union look good if they were fighting your bill. Like that would be
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not great for their public image, and their public image has already been struggling so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, frankly, like, you're right. Like, it's not like every single cop is bad. You had that cop that was at the trial who said, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Do something about it. Like,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
make a change.
Yep.
It's really funny when people like think about police officers or like political figures or just any sort of people that we've put on this pedestal. It's as if we forget that they're people and like that they're not capable of horrific things, when in reality that very pedestal that we've put them on is the exact thing that enables them and gives them the freedom to commit more crimes than the average person walking on the street.
We don't want to think of them as dirtbags. We would
No.
like to believe that our elected officials are good, decent people. We would like to believe that clergy are would never dream of hurting somebody, and that because it makes our lives easier, right?
It feels
I can go to
safer.
bed at night knowing, yeah, I can go to bed at night knowing that cops are good people, that my senators and presidents and all of those people are decent people that are looking out for the betterment of society. And when we have to face that realization that no, they're humans too, and there are some real dirtbags out there. We have to reconcile that, and that's not necessarily an easy thing to do.
I think that, well, one, ignorance is bliss, right?
Mhm.
We
Yep.
do like to live with kind of a level of ignorance so that we don't have to like acknowledge that these things exist, which I think is one of the reasons why so many people don't think sexual assault is a big deal or kind of like deny it being like this crazy big thing because they don't want to take the time to acknowledge how messed up it is and that it is very, very prevalent. Like, I think that universities do this with sexual assault. They're like, we don't have a problem. And I'm like, yeah, every campus actually has a problem. Why don't you acknowledge it and do something about it?
Could you dive a bit more into this piece of legislation that you are bringing forward? Share our
Yeah.
audience what you've been
Yeah.
doing.
So HB 1847 in the state of Pennsylvania will upgrade the charge of corruption of a minor of a sexual nature from a misdemeanor to a felony when it is committed by a peace officer. It will also upgrade the sentencing guidelines so that you get a felony, you are automatically having to register on the national database, and there is mandatory jail time up to 7 years. So those two are not currently part of it. If you commit, if you're found guilty of corruption of a minor of a sexual nature, you're getting probation, and that's it.
That is
And
so wild.
literally in the state of Pennsylvania, if you steal a car, you are going to get a more severe punishment than what this dirtbag did to my daughter. And so it narrows the scope in this case to just peace officers who are police officers, probation officers. It is a peace officer is there's a certification, and they typically carry a weapon.
These people in these positions of power, then the punishment should be greater. Because with great
Mm-hmm.
power comes great responsibility.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you can't.
yeah.
Crazy concept.
I know, right?
That during our case, there was a teacher within the county that had committed. I don't want to dismiss or belittle, but she had committed a lesser offense to a child.
Okay.
Because she is a teacher, she is considered what we call part of an institution where there is a relationship with the child. So teachers, healthcare workers, coaches, they are held to a higher standard. So in that
Right.
case, that woman received, I want to say she got 5 years of prison,
Wow. Okay.
as she should have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because police officers are not considered institutional, where they have an ongoing relationship, that they are not, that's what is taking away that institutional designation. And so it's essentially the same, you or I would get the same punishment if we were
Mhm.
found guilty of that
Mhm.
this guy did.
Yeah. That's crazy to me. Like
Yeah.
Shannon said, to reiterate it, these officers are in these positions of power and they're supposed to be making communities safer in theory. And then they just think that they can abuse that power and then not only abuse it, but then threaten the people that they're harming. And that to me is just like heartbreaking as a societal issue. And within communities, that's not making anyone feel safer. And, if you are choosing to serve as a police officer, that should be your number one duty. Your number one goal is to do anything that serves the community and makes it safer. After the cop Palmer, right? That's his name, Palmer, Joseph Palmer.
Joseph Palmer. He used to go
Right.
by he went by Palmer, but because his name is on his criminal charge, I call him Joseph now. And even though that was kind of his nickname, I associate nicknames with terms of endearment. So fuck
Right.
that. His name is Joseph.
Joseph was convicted of this and, didn't get jail time and wasn't charged with a felony. Can he still go and be a cop somewhere else?
If he had been charged with a felony, he would not, he'd be on the national database. And so, no, he would not. However, he is not able to carry a gun anymore. So he can't. Now, the problem is that we don't have a national database of bad cops. So if he could still carry his gun, he could theoretically go to a different state and get a job as a cop. And if the department did not do a thorough background check,
Right.
it's very possible that it wouldn't get picked up by anyone. And because he's got a license to carry, he could go ahead and do that. He cannot carry a gun now, will not be able to carry a gun in the future. So he won't be able to do that. But it is an absolute failure that we do not have a national database of bad cops. So this is one of the things that we were talking about the police union. This is probably not something that they're going to be all that cool with. Once I do finally get this bill passed, I want to start looking at what needs to happen at the federal level and looking at how we create this national database. I mean, the model is there. It's essentially the
Right.
same model as that for sex offenders, right?
Yeah.
We just gotta we just gotta start
Do it.
demanding
Yeah.
it from our elected officials.
Put some funding into it, get some manpower.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to go back, you're saying if in theory, if he still was able to carry a gun and he went to a different state, to a different police precinct and tried to get a job there, we're talking about if they didn't do a thorough background check, that they might not find it, might not even come up. And
Yep.
some people might be thinking, oh, well, in order to be an officer, you have to have a very thorough background check done. But it seems like, and I'm pretty sure I read this in the article, that some police precincts aren't doing very thorough background checks because they're low manpower. They just need officers. And so because of that, they're kind of being loosey-goosey with how they're doing these background checks and how they're hiring people onto their police force, which is another thing that is very terrible. and doesn't bring a lot of faith to
Yeah.
these police unions.
So the article in the Post. So first of all, the series is abused by the badge.
Mhm.
And the first article in the series, this is the series is by Jen Abelson and Jessica Contreras. And the first article came out in March, and the second article that we were part of was the one in June. And both articles speak to that inconsistency of the background checks.
Mhm.
So some departments are doing very thorough background checks. Many departments do psychological assessments. They check references, all sorts. But to your point, yeah, some departments are seriously understaffed. They need people, and or leadership is just not as concerned about the quality of the people in the department, whatever that may be, whatever the reason. Sometimes those background checks are not happening, and they're not going deep enough to find the bad cops.
We're not talking about small things slipping through the cracks here either. Like, we're
Yeah.
talking about, oh, whoops, like this guy decides to go and, try to work at a different
Yeah,
police force in a different place. And he happens to go to
yeah,
the one that isn't doing the in-depth background check and isn't doing their due diligence. And then
yeah.
all of a sudden, we're enabling him to assault all of these other people.
Whether it's sexual assault, whether it's physical assaults, domestic violence, drug abuse. Yeah, no, it's not an officer getting clocked doing 85 in a 45 or anything like that.
No.
These are serious charges. These are serious crimes that are not always being flagged,
Mhm. And
and
that are harming
that
other people.
exactly, and that is impacting all of us.
Mhm.
Those are the people that are charged with keeping us safe. They have a tremendous amount of power, and we got to do better.
So to switch gears a little bit, you're really fighting for your daughter right now, and you're fighting for all future people who are impacted by this. And something that we really admire about you and something that we learned very early on is that you were not somebody who has been, studying the law for years and knows all the intricacies of it and, and the processes super well. You came into this as a pissed off dad who never wanted any other family to have to go
Mm.
through what you went through. And even though you're like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, I just need to do something. And with that, you you took steps in this direction to make a change. And many times it's very hard for us when we want to make a change to actually take that step because we're so afraid of not knowing everything and we feel like we need to do all of this research before moving forward. But for you, you were like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it and I'm going to figure it out as I go. So could you
Yeah.
talk to us about how were you able to build up that courage to fight for change?
You know, no, I don't know. I don't know a damn thing about what I'm doing. I really don't. I was just pissed off, and I still am pissed off. And I cringe when people say, "Oh, you're so brave for what you're doing." I'm not. I'm pissed off. I also have nothing to lose, right?
Mhm.
Um, Look, a lot of parents are not in the position that I'm in. I'm a white guy. I have I have privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some parents that are not so fortunate, and we had people listen to us. So I feel like I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility for all of the other families that are going to be in this position. I'm not afraid of losing my job. I'm not afraid of being pinned as, um, an advocate, and that being
Mm-hmm.
my identity. I'm 54. I'm thinking about my retirement, right? I'm thinking
Right.
about what I'm going to do on the weekends. I'm not necessarily trying to, build my resume at this point. I have a responsibility. If my daughter was able to get up on the stand in the courtroom and face down this guy, to face down the defense attorney and talk about what happened to her, if she was able to endure all of the interviews with the investigators, if she was able to put up with all of the shit she had to when this thing hit the local media, I I've got the easy part. I'm just channeling that anger.
Hmm.
Anger is not a bad emotion.
Right.
It's just dependent upon how you use it.
Mhm.
And I will never forget that pit in my stomach as I watched this guy walk out of the courtroom. Maybe he's going to go out to lunch. Maybe he's go doing some shopping. And yeah, I had an issue with that. And
Right.
I don't want another person to be in that position, to have to go through everything we went through and then to see that. Somebody has to.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
So
why not you?
might as well
exactly.
be me.
I've had this conversation with a lot of people recently. Um, and during my time in grad school, I got to talk to a lot of state legislators, a lot of senators, and just people who are working for like local government all the way up to state government. And they could sit there in front of me and tell me how they made an impact and how they made a change. And I think that sometimes the ability to enact change at the local level is kind of underrated. Like I think we sometimes
Oh,
undermine it.
sure.
And I think that like in order to create the biggest impact, I think that is done at the community level. That is done at the local level. That is done calling up your state legislator and being like, this is a problem and we need to do something about it. And, that can be scary and that can be hard, but sometimes you got to say, fuck it.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah,
Because again, if you don't do it, who's going to? And
exactly.
every single person that I have shared our story with, the look on their face, and I mean, they're essentially saying, "What the fuck? You're
Hmm.
kidding, right? All right, now what are you going to do with that? All right,
Hmm.
you're surprised, you're shocked, you are disappointed. Okay, now what?"
Now what? Yeah.
Yeah,
And so we got to do something about it. I firmly believe not not everyone is able to do this. I also want to be really clear. You don't have to go change the law to to be a support, to be a parent, to support someone who has been through something as horrific as this,
Right.
hmm,
right? It looks different for everyone. Somebody does have to, but I also recognize not everyone is in a position where they can't. I'm fortunate that I'm able to. Sometimes it is just you got to just sit in the shit with the survivor, and
Yeah.
let them know that you're there for them, that you support them. Maybe it's going to look like you looking for resources, for support for them. Maybe it's going to look different for everyone, but I would hope that there are enough people that are going to want to take it up a few notches and do something.
you really hit it on the nose earlier when you were talking about how it's really hard to get people to want to listen to the problems that are surrounding sexual assault, the fact that it exists, how prevalent it is, the fact that it's happening, that police officers are doing these crimes. And so throughout your process, kind of this legislative process, you might say. How do you think you were able to get people to listen?
If I get somebody's attention, or I'd start every email off with, "Hi, I'm Chris McGhee. My daughter was sexually assaulted by a police officer." That usually gets them to stop and listen up,
Yeah,
because
you would
not
hope.
that one would hope. Unfortunately, it has seemed to have gotten some attention, and again, not a terribly pleasant conversation. Fortunately, people, for the most part, have stopped and listened. Uh, Not everyone. I've had a couple of legislators within the Pennsylvania House who have been dismissive. I'm not going to out them, because I still need some support. I got to get this damn thing passed.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to know that no, not everyone has the common decency to listen. There are lawmakers who cannot find the time to speak to a constituent who's been involved with something like this. They are out there.
So you've led kind of with story first, like the
Mhm.
big or the
Yeah,
story first, and you hope that that at least draws their attention. And that's horrible
yeah,
to
Right.
say, because like it shouldn't take that, but that's the reality of where we are right now. And so you
yeah.
lead story first, and with these other legislators who aren't really giving you the time of day, I hope they do in the future, and I hope that there's a way that you can get connected to them. I don't know what that
Mhm.
looks like, but
You got to start with connecting to the emotion, right?
Yeah.
So I do a lot of leadership development, and with leaders, you talk about connecting with people, and we can rattle off the rules all day long, but if you're able to connect to the emotions and why we do this, it's far more effective. These people are reading laws all day long. They're reading about these bills that are being proposed, and so I wanted to put a human face, a story behind it, so
mm,
that they could connect the dots. I would rather be able to lead with something else, but
right.
I got to get their attention. I've got to get them to listen to me, and this has been the most effective way so far.
If someone from your community or multiple people from your community are reading your email, and, they're going to be like, wow, this is happening in my community. Like, this isn't something that's far away. This isn't in a different state or across the country. Like, this is happening here right now. And I think that's why you have probably been so successful in getting so many people to actually stop and listen. And I think that definitely, I would hope, brings some hope to this as well.
Let me just say this, though. I have not been successful yet. This bill has not
Right.
passed, and
Right.
until it does pass, what I am starting to learn is I got a lot of people shining me on. I got a lot of people giving me lip service. And so I get people saying, "Oh, that's terrible." That you get the equivalent of thoughts and prayers. Shut the fuck up. I don't want that. I want you to flat out say, "I am going to support this. This is not
Yeah.
okay." Chris Pielli, legislator from Westchester, Pennsylvania, when I spoke to him on the call with him, he said, "This is ridiculous." He co-sponsored the bill while I was speaking to him. Didn't give me this bullshit of, "Oh, I'm going to have to go back and I need to research this further." No,
No.
he said, "This is fucked."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't use that language, but he was like, "This is not okay." And I need more of that. I'm no longer as optimistic about it. I'm a little bit jaded, because
Okay.
I'm seeing just how much bullshit there is even at this level. I mean, you think of the circus in Washington, D.C., and you're like, "Well, it can't be that bad." No, it is that bad.
Right.
It absolutely is that bad. I've got people on the Democratic led Judiciary Committee, someone flat out told me, we cannot support this unless we know what the Republicans are going to support in order to get our support. Are you shitting me? It's not about protecting survivors. It's not about accountability. It's politics.
Yeah.
How fucked is that? I'm not quite as wide-eyed and optimistic as I once was. I'm a little bit more jaded about this, and so the fight continues.
So, Chris, we actually have quite a few parents who listen to this podcast. And from your perspective as a parent, how do you heal from the trauma your child has experienced? Because it not only impacts them, I know it impacts you and the entire family. How do you not stay in a constant state of fear after something like this happened to your daughter?
There are a lot of resources for survivors, as there should be. The tough part is, as a parent, you often feel like you need to put the needs of your child first, which you should, absolutely. Want to be very clear about that. But here's the thing. You've also got to take care of yourself.
Right.
And because this is not easy. This is a really hard road ahead of you. And dealing with trauma, recovering from trauma is certainly not linear. It's not easy, and it's going to be tough. I did not do everything right. I absolutely did not. That there are things that I wish I could take back. Here's the thing: I can't stay there, because if I continue to dwell on the fact that I did not say all the right things in the very beginning, I'm never going to be what my daughter needs. I've got to own it. I've got to ask for forgiveness. I have to demonstrate that I'm going to do better, and I have to dig down and dig my heels in and say, I'm with you. I'm in this with you, because it's not easy. But as a parent, if you don't do things right, own it, accept it, and move forward. But there's a lot of guilt involved. There's a lot of shame.
Right.
I should have seen what was happening. I should have known this. I should have been more cognizant that there are evil people out there, and that's no way to live, right? Yeah, I should have my eyes open. We should all be a little bit more aware, but I can't live the rest of my life beating myself up. And I've got to do the best I can. That's part of why I do this. I
Right.
need to demonstrate to my daughter that I got your back. I am so not okay with this, and I'm going to take this on. But getting help, talking to a therapist, that's okay. That's good. You need to model the behaviors that you want for your child. You got to be strong. Sometimes you got to put that game face on. You're going to be getting shit.
Right.
But in time, this is part of the healing process, and you can do it. But nobody said this thing was going to be easy.
Thank you for that. As a parent, it's one of those things of you could sit there and you could say, well, how didn't I catch this? And why didn't I notice? And what could I have done different? But it's like, it's done. And if I live in that space of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, then I will never, ever be able to help my child in the way that they need, or support other survivors in the way that they need, or I will never be able to step up to the plate and be like, okay, I'm the person to change the way that the law is. I'm that person. I am that guy. And so you can't live in that space. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here.
This was such a pleasure to be able to talk to you about what you're doing. And if you live in Pennsylvania, pay attention to this bill.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yes. And I would encourage you to take a look at your state laws, start asking some questions, lean into this, be part of this. Be part of the solution.
You know, I would encourage, if anybody's listening and is from Pennsylvania and, you know, maybe they want to talk to Chris, maybe you guys want to get connected with him. I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to you. I'm sorry, I just said that, but
No, I'd love it.
yeah.
I would love it. Please, I set up a website because, you know,
Mhm.
that's what you got to do. And so I've got a blog on there, and I've got a little information about the bill. Just go to www.chrismcghee.com. That's McGhee, McGhee. Yeah, drop me an email. You
Yeah.
know, tell me you're as pissed off as I am. But I also want y'all to know that you're not alone, and you know, that especially those parents out there, you're not alone in this, and I'd love to hear from you and offer my support.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we will put all of that in the description so they can easily access your website, your email, all that good stuff.
Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in and listened to this week's episode. We love you all so much. We hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.